new finding out about everything about the SNAP system as well as illegal immigration. So for one, just to lead off with a little known fact, very little known fact. How many illegal immigrants are on SNAP? None. Just none. None. None, 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 none. Undocumented immigrants are ineligible to receive federal supplement nutritional SNAP assistance program stuff. Yeah, it doesn't work. They don't have social security numbers, they cannot receive it. The only way they end up receiving it is if they have a child that is born through birthright citizenship within this country. So they have their citizenship, but mind you, when they get the allotments and the amounts, it's only adjusted for the child. They are not included. They're literally taken out. The parent who files on the kid's behalf is taken out of the allotment accounting. Okay? Now, in regards to benefits to eligible family members, some studies have estimated that a small percentage of total SNAP spending, roughly 1 to 2%, goes to households that include undocumented members, almost exclusively for their US born citizen children. Okay? That doesn't mean that the undocumented members are getting the money. They're the ones that use the card at the store, and then maybe that's where you get the idea that illegal immigrants are getting snapped from. Or maybe it's because you see someone that's a different skin tone and a different culture than you, or speaks a different language, and you just assume that when you see the blue card or whatever the snap card is for your state. All right? That's biggest misconception of all. And then this even goes into misleading statistics, as a CIS report also included more frequently cited but misleading statistic that 59% of households headed by undocumented immigrants used at least one major welfare program. That doesn't mean that they're receiving said program help. It's for their kids, if that. And also, when we look into fraud, overall SNAP fraud, so it doesn't matter if it's illegal immigration or illegal immigrants supposedly using it or not, but overall fraud. So say if someone's working under the table and they're not reporting their income and they also receive SNAP benefits and they get caught, that honestly is most likely this, or they're lying about the amount of dependents that are in their household or about their income, one or the other. Mind you, I mean, taxes are literally, a part of the system that is looked at when regarding SNAP deployment, SNAP allowances, as well as employment status. All right. Now, when you look at fraud by undocumented individuals, out of that 1%, 0.1% to 0.2% might be undocumented related SNAP fraud. So, say an undocumented immigrant makes up a social security number or tries to make up an identity or steal someone's identity. 0.1% of fraud, just relative to the overall of the total program spending. So we have 1% of total payments, overall fraud, and then 1/10 of that to 2/10 of that, so 1/10 to 1/5 being quote unquote illegal immigrant fraud. And that's about the total, budget of about 100 billion, which that's what they're estimating, mind you. But eligible non-citizens receive most non-citizen benefits. Most non-citizens who receive SNAP are legally present refugees, asylum seekers, or lawful permanent residents. Okay? So the ones that are not citizens, that are, well, technically legal, because we did have asylum programs for people of other countries that were coming to seek asylum because it's either war torn, or there's issues with the governance, or there's a lot of crime, or they're being targeted politically, etc. They come here because this is supposed to be the land of opportunity, right? And same thing with refugees. We have refugee programs or lawful permanent residents, so people that go through the process legally. Okay? Nearly 1.5 million non-citizens receive SNAP benefits. It doesn't mean they're illegal. Okay? They were going through a legal process, or they were actually legal immigrants. Now, when we go look at numbers for unemployment and everything else, we have some reports from PBS. We have reports from Pew Research Center that goes over at least statistics since 2023. And then when we consider from 2022 to 2024, the slowdown of the rate of immigration influx coming in. So from 2022 to 2023, mind you, the influx itself was due to people seeking asylum. The 2 million, the total with some protection from deportation, which includes asylum seekers specifically, went from 4 million previously in 2022 to 6 million. That's the 2 million rise. People that go across the board are the ones that typically are referred to as like illegals, right? 7.7 million to 8 million. And that's within that's what exists within the country overall, is about 8 million that are actually illegal, that are either children or adults that are illegal, no matter the age, no matter if they're able-bodied or not. That's the total. And we can also start getting into even more statistics, right? And mind you, again, none of that 8 million receive SNAP. And out of the 6 supposed million, they may or may not, depending on, their job status. Because, oddly enough, most of them are employed. Most of them are employed if they are not children. Now here, I have even more stats than the last longer video that I just did, but the numbers. So we have about 14 million, or more correctly put, when we look at how many illegal immigrants are on SNAP, not deported, how many illegal immigrants are in the US? 14 million. Some numbers suggest 13.7. And when we do some math, it actually comes out really close to 13.7. Right? When we look at the labor force participation, so out of that 14 million, 9.7 million work. They work, and they're not receiving SNAP. Again, they're not getting government assistance throughout all that. If they're working, they're not children. Between the ages from 16 and up, when you look at the data from PBS, as well as from EPI, which they also go into the employment status in much more depth. So labor force, what's considered employed under that labor force. All right. So out of the 9 million, 9.8 million that can work, all right, the civilian population ages 16 and older that may be able to work. This, I don't know if this includes for disability. Some of these numbers don't include for disability or for age. Because if you're too old to work in certain jobs, then you're just simply too old, and you might still be an illegal immigrant. You might have crossed with your family. That's a real thing that happens. So you might be considered not in the labor force because of that. Or if you're a child, that's, 16 to 18. Like a teenager, basically. You can be included in that number. All right. Unemployed but seeking work. We do have active searches going on. Okay. But that's out of the 14 million. The rest is literally children. And not even just children. We got 1.5 million illegal children, so children that crossed. Legal children is about, I believe it was close to 4 million when we looked in the previous video, so go check that out. That one's a lot longer and more in depth, as I also just search even deeper than what I initially thought. But it's very interesting. And again, none of these people are getting SNAP. The illegal children, at least from my understanding, are not getting SNAP. They don't have social security numbers. They can't get SNAP. Maybe they're part of the fraud cases. Who knows? Okay? But out of the children, which 1/4 of the total children that are of migrant parents are illegal. So 1.5 million, and it's about 4 to 4 point something million that are born here overall. I believe that was also in either the EPI report or the Pew Center. So I'll link these 3 reports down below, because this is where we're also getting a lot of the information from. And mind you, we also got to consider, again, the rate of deportations, but that is also another factor. The rate of illegal immigrants coming into the country, or immigrants in general, was somewhat upwards of that 2 million from 2023 to 24, but slowed down significantly because of, the election, because of what might happen. And then from 24 to 2025, it's been declining ever since. It's been going down, especially now that when we look at how many, as since October 2020, well, up to October 2025, from the beginning of the year, 527,000 actually like disappeared or deported. Okay, this is from apparently the DHS. Additionally, 1.6 million people. Now, this part I don't know if they were citizens or not, but they voluntarily self-deported. So even considering that 14 million that we left off on in 2023, and then maybe like another, it was a slowdown rate, so it's up to 2 million, but it's slower than that. So maybe 1.4, 1.5, so maybe up to 15 million. And now we're already back down over 2 million at least, or well, maybe at most. Again, it can, depending on who they consider among the 1.6 million people as legal or illegal. Maybe it is illegal people. Self-deportations. So figure that includes those who choose to self-deport or left the country voluntarily. All right. I don't think that might be considered, though, as moving out of the country for normal citizens. So maybe that was due. I mean, they were also offering, I think, a few thousand if you self-deported. So that could be the 1.6. Therefore, the amount of immigrants that we have now is easily less than the 14 million that we had in 2023. If more than 2 million have self-deported and less than 2 million came in since 2023. All right, you see where the math is? You see how that might work? Okay. But going back to the 2023 data, as that is what we have. So we have the 1.5 million illegal children out of the 14 million illegal immigrants. 9.7 million are able to be employed or are employed. Okay? And then unemployed from 16 and up, 2.55 million. Add those up, it roughly gets to the 14 million. Some polls even suggested, some articles suggested 13.7 was the number for 2023. And this would also explain maybe an overlap in the unemployed and the employed, depending on, your age consideration as well as other factors. But the amount unemployed when you include children, between that and the unemployed, is 4 million to 4.3 that are illegal individuals, okay, considered illegal. Again, none of them are receiving SNAP. None of them. The ones that have children that are born here are receiving SNAP for them, for the children, not for themselves. Or maybe if there's a spouse and they're both unemployed or whatever, but even then that consideration is made at the time of the call. And I mean, following policy, they're not included. Just how it is. And now when we look at total immigrants in general, 47.8 million. And this gets interesting when we look at the numbers here, because there's at least 8.1 million not accounted for in that for 47.8 million. This is where things might get a little bit confusing as to considerations of who's illegal and who's not. But at least in terms of legal immigrants, 39.7 million, with 27.4 million being naturalized, 9.9 million being green card, and then temp visa, whether it's a work visa or whatever, H1B1 or school, 2.4 million. So a very low number in regards to that. And like I said, we had deportations. So the updated was, that's a sloppy ass number. There we go. Boo, 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 boo. That's why I got screwed up. Boom. At least so far, just this year alone, about 500,000. All right, we don't have any more immigrants really coming in either. We don't really have many more illegals. And actually, it's funny when you look at the stats by state of who is bringing in immigrants. I think it was up here. There it is. Florida, at least in from 2021 to 2023, the 4 states with the biggest growth. Big red Florida. That's the amount of illegals that went into Florida, 700,000. Meanwhile, Texas, 450,000. California is actually less than Texas. Mind you, Texas is bordering Mexico. Florida is bordering the ocean, and that makes sense, again, when we look at the kinds of immigrants that are illegal that are coming in. Whether it's Haitians or it's mostly people that are seeking asylum. Again, it's with some protections, right? The number that really influxed, and when we consider the kinds of immigrants that are coming in, whether it's Venezuelan, Honduras, El Salvador, Haiti, which had, the giant tsunami, storms, the hurricanes, whatever the hell happened. Just all these countries that people are not able to live in, and the only other option that at least they see for themselves is to try to come here. So again, from like Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela as well. Coming in through Florida, it seems, right? I mean, a majority from the 2 years, so not even just the 2 million influx of asylum seekers, as we saw in that graph, because that's the, again, some protections means that they're seeking asylum. They might have came in through the border illegally, but then they were like, hey, they explained their case, and then they enter the process. It's not like they can immediately go back to their country that's fallen apart with no help whatsoever. They can sure try to go back and help their country, but if they're children or big families that aren't able to do that, or maybe if instances where there's political upheaval, issues in governance, right? A lot of corruption, a lot of crime. They don't have a way to really deal with that themselves as a small family compared to a population of probably a few million. And it just seems logical that, we do have laws. So depending on your definition and how you see illegal, an individual, your typical illegal, what you hear people talk about is, again, that 8 million. So that about half as many as that 14 million might suggest. And again, none of them are getting SNAP. Not a single one. The ones that do are the ones that are pregnant women that come over and give birth. Or unless they're asylum seekers, and then maybe a portion of them, but then you would consider them legal because they're going through a legal process if it's asylum seeking or refugee, right? But now the definition of that changed this year. So when people look at this number, they see the 14 and they think, oh, it doesn't matter what's going on in your life, or if you're kicked out of your country, you're being chased by friggin' wolves, or whatever. Like, if you're in mortal danger, we don't give a shit about you anymore. Or at least that's what the policy of the US seems to suggest. So between all of that, and again, none of them are getting the government assistance programs per se. They're not getting housing. Maybe they are by a city and city basis, but it's very little. If anything, they're either homeless shelters or they have family that are already legal that live here. Maybe distant cousins or whatever, right? Or maybe they're part of humanitarian programs or part of certain church organizations that have members that wouldn't mind housing them and taking care of them. But that's up to an individual basis, especially if the person is going through a legal process to weigh whether they should stay in the country or not. Which now that was thrown out of the window because, again, the definition was changed to what's considered legal or illegal. And those are very important factors that people just don't seem to give two shits about. Okay? But even then still, when that status switches, they're not eligible for SNAP anymore. Because illegals, again, can't get SNAP. If your social security number doesn't work, even if it's within the state's, like the federal system, it's not going to work for SNAP. And the whole rules change, which is interesting. It would be interesting to see if we actually can get accurate data from 2023 onward. But the hope of that is, it's so skewed. With the amount of things that are going on simultaneously in this administration and the changes in leadership, as well as who's in charge of what and loyalists, etc., it's very untrust any numbers going forward for a bit until, things actually get to a more sensible state. Because you would think at least people that are coming to the country, that are looking for asylum or refugee status, would be considered illegal. but that obviously is not the case. And so maybe that might explain when we look at this temporary visa holders. I mean, 2.4 million, that still doesn't make sense. Naturalized citizens, that doesn't make sense. So there's a portion within here that is not considered that. I mean, subsequently, when we look at, what was it, that 8.1 million. So from the legal immigrants, those that 6 million that were in asylum might not even be accounted between the legal immigrants or the illegal, given the fact that we just looked at, what people that would cross the border just looking for opportunity, not necessarily running away from the country for whatever reason. They just wanted to be a part of the United States and not go through the court process. The 8.1 million, the people that everyone complains about, right? That does make sense, especially with the graph that we just looked at. So those that are in asylum just seem to be in limbo regardless. And even then, when we look at, percentage of individuals that might be a part of SNAP, it's going to be children. So it won't be the illegal children and the unemployed that are illegal, or even the employed that are illegal. None of these people count towards SNAP benefits at all, unless it's within the 0.1% of the budget that's accusedly fraud from illegal immigration. All right, 0.1% of 100 billion. So maybe $1 million, maybe within over a year, mind you, and in total. So it's definitely not going to be 1 million people. Even considering that, it's probably going to be only maybe 100,000 or so. That would be fraud, and then eventually they get caught out anyways. Out of the 42 million SNAP beneficiaries, all right, it's not a considerable amount when looking at the total budget. And it's something that can be accounted for. If you want programs to account for that, then sure, do that. Maybe have better interview processes by state. But just claiming these facts out of, well, not even facts, just data out of pure ignorance without looking into the numbers and where things actually stand, and then saying that SNAP benefits are being abused by illegal immigrants. And then another fun fact is when we look at unemployment, right? Unemployment might include people that are eligible for SNAP or might not. And we looked over that before. Now, I was able to look up that apparently unemployed illegal immigrants do count toward the unemployment number. So that 2.55 million unemployed 16 and up is a part of the 7.4 million unemployed individuals. So when we recalculate, because our previous video, we went over people that can possibly get SNAP. And as we just went over, illegal immigrants can't get SNAP. They can get SNAP for their children, but their children aren't going to be included in unemployment anyways. They're kids. And with 3/4 of children with parents that of illegal status, 3/4 of them being legal citizens born here. Again, I guess depending on your belief in birthright citizenship, that's bound to change. But even then, still, it's them that are getting partial SNAP benefits, only paying for their children, not even themselves. Which, quite frankly, that by law, that makes sense when you apply birthright citizenship. Especially to kids that it's not up to them that they're born in this country or not, if their parents decide to do that. And if you want to hold the parents accountable in some way, shape, or form, then go through a process, go through a court process and deal with it. Don't just snatch them up and deport them just because they're part of the family, especially to a country that they don't even speak the language of, for one. Like, that's the most outlandish thing. So besides the numbers, the human efficacy concerns, the moral concerns that are going on right now is insane. But as our last previous video, we went over trying to see the amount of young, lazy men that were taking advantage of SNAP that were unemployed. This makes that number much smaller. Much smaller. 2.5 million being considered within the unemployment that are just simply ineligible for SNAP. And then we have already, what was that? 34.5% of unemployed are illegal and can't participate in SNAP. So we take that number out and put that into consideration, where we already have 65. Well, now we can take that into consideration. 65.5% are legal out of that 7.4 million. So a little over half are legal under that unemployed number, while 91.5% of the unemployed are able-bodied, whether they're legal or illegal. And then same thing with gender, 52.7% of unemployed are men. And we continue 16 to 19 age, right? Because, I mean, another consideration too is most of the illegal population, they're going to be adults probably between the ages of 18 to 55. Realistically, they're not going to be elderly people climbing a fence. They're not going to be a bunch of teenagers that decide, oh, I think it's just a funny idea to come into the US and live there forever. I mean, there's probably like a handful, like maybe 5 individuals that are 16 to 19 maybe crossing the border. But it's not millions, right? That just does not make any sense by any metric. And then same thing with little children. Little children aren't crossing the border typically unaccompanied by a parent. That would be illegal. You know, I mean, not even just the kid coming over the country by themselves. That's just ethically and morally screwed up. And the fact that it's a kid, it seems like obviously there's no sympathy towards, I mean, children, toward the elderly, toward the disabled, toward anything. Because we take all these numbers out and also account for about 50% of the 19.7% of the unemployed between 20 to 24 that may be claimed by the head of household and ineligible for SNAP if the parents or household income is above the threshold of eligibility. Because that's a real factor, because parents that, you know, file taxes and claim taxes, the legal parents, if they have kids that are living at home, which we did look over the statistics before, it's over 50% really, but we're being a little generous here and just saying about 50%, rounding it down a little bit. Because if they're claimed to be part of the household by taxes, that means, as SNAP looks at, is the total amount of income for the household, not the individual. Or it's really whatever you report, but as we just saw, there's only about 1% of the funding goes toward fraud like that, apparently. Unless everyone's lying, but then you just seem to have trust issues at that point if you can't even trust these numbers that you're looking at here. But we work through all those numbers, right? So out of the 7.4 million, we're trying to figure out how many unemployed, lazy men that there are. And not even just young men, I guess just unemployed, lazy men, right? We haven't even considered taking out the elderly yet, and we haven't even considered looking into ages 20 to 24, 24 to 34, more specifically, which would probably be the end of the young men standard, so to speak. They're not really young going past 35. At least that's what I believe in, but who knows? This is why I'm only leaving it up to the 20 to 55, because even when we weigh it against the total amount of SNAP beneficiaries that exist, because again, we're looking for, out of the unemployed, taking out the illegals that can't even get SNAP, taking out, you know, taking out disabled, taking out kids that might not be eligible, all right? Because people that are able-bodied and able to work, and then looking at men specifically, because that's what at least Senator Thune likes to point out. So after all that, we have about 1.87 million unemployed men between the ages of 20 and up, so including the elderly, that may be participating in SNAP. That may be participating in SNAP out of 42 million participants, which a large portion of the participants are really just children, whether they're children born in the US from illegal families, or children that have working parents, or children that don't have working parents, okay? Because those are all factors as well in the total amount of SNAP. But not the majority of them are going to be, again, if a quarter of the children of illegal family members, illegal parents, is only 1.5 million, right? Times a quarter by 1.75 to find the total amount of children, whether they're legal or not, that are under illegal parents, or parents that either gave birth to them here or brought them here. Okay, so 1.5 times 1.75, so 2.625 million. That's the total amount of children that you actually wouldn't even be able to consider. I have to minus. No, do I have to minus the. That's the 1.75. Maybe I'm screwing up on math real quick. Hold on. I know there's also a statistic, but I don't want to go looking again. Immigrants. Where is it? At 2.1, I'm waiting asylum. Shifting countries. It's different types of countries. This is more in depth in regards to that. And this gives slightly different numbers to that illegal. There is a difference between the PBS and the, what was it? PAX, or whatever the hell that one's called. This one. Pew Research Center, of about 2 million, but I think that's a consideration in protection status, not necessarily of the total. I mean, even the total is slightly different because 9.7 plus 4 million, that's that 13.7 that we were discussing earlier. That might actually be the more accurate number from 2023. Now, in regards to children, 14 million numbers increased in 2024. Yeah, like I said, estimating those numbers increased in 2024, but began decreasing in 2025. I mean, rapidly decreasing if you account for self-deportations. Now this is at 340,000. Man, I might not be able to find it in a timely fashion. Come on, where the hell are you? What's that? Yeah, 7.5 million households. Read factors. Where was it? Yep, that was legal status. Employment not in the labor force. I mean, yeah, a group includes students, stay-at-home parents, and others who are not seeking employment when it looks at unemployment. Employment metrics consider legal status. So this was, just to be clear about the unemployment, it doesn't include status, but it does include illegals as a part of the number. Inclusion, not status. The survey's purpose is to identify individuals who are working or looking for work, not to classify them by legal status. So, yeah. Now, how they consider that unemployed metric compared to actively looking for a job versus just unemployed might also be a different story as well, and might skew the numbers slightly, or, well, not even slightly compared to last video. Well, actually, no, slightly compared to last video, more so compared to this video. But, come on, man. Oh, there it is. In addition, about 1.5 million children under 18 were unauthorized immigrants in 2023. Group nearly doubled since 2021. Another 1.4 million adults born in the U.S. lived with at least one parent who is an unauthorized immigrant. In 2023, about 300,000 babies were born in the U.S. to unauthorized immigrants. So that's the birth, and here we go. 4.6 million children under 18 born in the U.S. lived with an unauthorized immigrant parent in 2023. All right, so born in the U.S., birthright citizenship, 4.6 million children. That is what you would consider a part of potentially receiving SNAP. 4.6 million. When you're considering the whole idea of illegal immigrants receiving SNAP benefits. That is what people are angry about. They're angry about the kids getting the food money, not the immigrants, the kids. And whether they realize it or not. So this is why we're looking at these numbers. Right? This is exactly why. 4.6 million. I got a number way skewed, so my math was off, but curious. So 4.6 times, 0.25. Yeah, it's the 1.15. So, well, yeah, 1.5. Yeah, so a little bit skewed from what I did, but there you go. So the number is 4.6 million children born in U.S. under illegal parents. Possibly on SNAP. So we got 4.6 million children, and then compare that to supposedly the 1.87 million unemployed men ages 20 and up, or the 1.56 million unemployed men ages 20 to 55, so taking out elderly, that might participate in SNAP. Mind you, we can also look at adults, men and women, aged 20 to 55 unemployed. It's about 2.3 million that might participate in SNAP, compared to the 4.6 million children of illegal parents that participate in SNAP. Number of unemployed added this year is over 1 million. With the layoffs, especially now, even more so, is way over 1 million now. It's probably 1.2, 1.4 million as of this point, with the most recent layoffs. Okay? That's adding into the 2.3 million easily, 20 to 55. All right, people that aren't retiring, people that are just straight up getting laid off of working age out of college. Okay? Or within college age. So that's a very big consideration. Percentage-wise, compared to the number of SNAP recipients, the total amount of adults, only 5.5% of SNAP recipients. All right? Total amount of adults, regardless of sex. Total amount of men that might be considered young, if you consider ages 34, 35 to 55 young, but able-bodied men that are unemployed take up only about 3.7% of SNAP. And again, I'm looking at 20 to 55 with the consideration of eligibility in regards to household and taxes and how, reality works. And then you have the 4.6 million children out of the 42. So let's do that math. I'm curious now. 4.6 divided by 42. That's 11%. So 11% of children up to 18, which is another consideration that I made as well. Again, this kind of goes in hand with eligibility, because once they're 18, then you're not really gonna I mean, you can still claim them, I guess, on your taxes, but in terms of SNAP, there's probably a question in regards to that. But then also we start getting into this whole unemployment number, so they're not really considered. Okay, and also with this number, I took out 16 and 19 with the consideration that they're most likely living with their parents, whether they're legal or not, whether their parents are legal or not. All right, so now we have 11% of children up to 18 born in the U.S. from illegal parents that may participate in SNAP. Okay? So it's just part of the children too, because, I mean, 4.6 million children, and let's end up. How many children total are SNAP recipients? Can we get a number? Oh, 2023. Okay, cool. Children made up about 39% of all SNAP participants, with roughly 11% being under that. Okay. School age contributed to the 41.7 million average monthly. This means approximately 16 million children receive SNAP benefits as a part of the larger program that served over 40 million people. All right. 16 million. So even when we're looking at immigration status, or, regardless of immigration status, because I'm pretty sure this is considering regardless of immigration status, we got a total of 16 million. So we have 4.6 million. Excuse me, mouth's dry. 4.6 million children born in the U.S. under illegal parents, possibly on SNAP. Another 1.5 illegal children. So actually, that number is a little bit different, isn't it? 4.6 plus 1.5, that's what? That's 6.1. Oh. Yep. 6.1 million children from illegal parents, regardless of their individual status. Then, that being 1.5 illegal children and 4.6 birthright children. Okay? So this is what you're looking at. Because again, adults that are illegal aren't getting SNAP. They get 6.1 compared to 16 million. So, 10 million, you got a 6 to 16 ratio. Yeah. So 10 million children of parents that are most likely employed, given the unemployment numbers, are receiving SNAP. So, and then from illegal immigration, you have a number of about 6.1 million. that are, I guess, taking up SNAP payments that are children. And are you going to blame the kids? Are you going to blame them? You can blame their parents. But again, that large portion of the parents are literally running from war-torn countries, countries of political divide, just downhill decline, countries going through natural disasters, like reasonable things to be escaping from. So you're really going to blame them too? Like that's the issue. Is the issue isn't the number of children, it's taking up how much of that, because what is that? What percentage is that? Oh, the total SNAP recipients. So 6.1, 42, it's 14.5%. Are children that have parents of questionable status. And then I got the 16 divided by 42. About 38% of the SNAP recipients being children from parents that are most likely employed or are illegal, I guess. That them themselves can't receive SNAP. So but then as you've seen with the employment numbers, most of the illegal immigrants are employed. Okay? And we got this. 38% of SNAP recipients are strictly children, regardless of parents' legal and employment status. Okay. And again, 16 million children SNAP benefits are paying for. Great. That's good, right? That would be objectively good. You don't want children to starve. You don't want children to die, regardless of whatever situation they might be in. It's just inhumane and unethical. Meanwhile, when it comes to the amount of unemployed young men that are going through unemployment for the layoffs or for whatever reason, that's only like a couple million. If that is only, it's tiny. It is tiny, even compared to the amount of children. 1.87 million unemployed men, or 1.56 million, compared to 16 million children. So Thune is absolutely wrong. Because even when you look at the unemployed men that are able-bodied, that are elderly, some of them are parents to these kids. Some of them are parents to the 16 million freaking kids. But not all of them have 16 million kids. It doesn't make sense. But each one have, what, 8.5 kids? That also doesn't make sense. So you can't just simply claim that SNAP pays for the unemployed and lazy and all that shit, because the math doesn't math up. It doesn't pay for the unemployed's kids. Most of the kids that are getting paid for are of parents that are already employed, whether they're legal or not. They are working as what would consider to be the unemployed, right? What we consider to be the unemployed, percentage-wise, 3.7% of SNAP recipients are unemployed able-bodied men, or 5.5% of SNAP recipients, possible SNAP recipients. That's if they participate in the program. And again, if you're receiving unemployment as well, if you got laid off, that counts against how much you get for SNAP. So it's not even the total amount of budget that you're getting. You're not getting even the average of 188. You're getting a smaller percentage of that. Of that budget. Most of the budget's going to either children or big families, or disabled or the elderly, or people that are working. There's just a lot of working people that need some help. Because you take out that, you take out what would be the unemployed, able-bodied men. So we can take out the kids, right? Or we can leave the kids included and just take out, what, the 2.3 million adults aged 20 to 55? I think that's more reasonable when we're looking at this, right? 2.3 million minus 42 million? Or, well, no, we'll just do divide. We'll just do divide, right? 2.3 divided by 42 equals... Oh, yeah, no, that was the 5%. We did the math. No, it was minus. Or 42. Jesus Christ. 42 minus 2.3 equals... And we're gonna make this big number. Okay. And we're gonna... This is it. This is the final number. This is the number that is most likely the truth. 39.6 million SNAP recipients are either children, elderly, mind you, age 55 and up, working, or disabled. Okay? Okay? And then the percentage, whoops. And the percentage, so what, 2.4 divided by, that's only 5%. No, actually, no, the other way around. 39.6, sorry. 39.6 divided by 42. 94%. 94% of SNAP recipients are either children, elderly, working, or disabled. That is a lot bigger than the last number that I got last time. Mind you, with legal status or protections. Okay. That's the number. So this is the short version. I'm gonna even do a shorter version. This is it. This is it. This is the statement. This is the statement that people should be considering. I mean, you can take out the 1.5 illegal children and you're not going to put that much of a dent if you feel like those children aren't even receiving the SNAP, which maybe they're not because they don't have social security numbers. But even then still, that's only making this a larger percent, if that, I suppose. Because then they're not getting SNAP. Then maybe that makes it smaller. No, I don't know, it depends. What do you think? What do you think children that are brought here alongside their parents should be punished? Or no? Because that's by the end of the day, this is what we're looking at. This is what the numbers tell us. This is what the reality is. Especially when we look at fraud as well. Besides all the bullshit that senators like John Thune is saying, things Donald Trump says, just everything. Everything that this administration is saying proves that they are just simply wrong and disconnected from the reality of society itself. Because all these people are legal in some way, shape, or form. Alright? That's just it. And even if I Had 1 point, what, minus 1.5 million from this. So 39.5 minus 1.5. It's 38. And divide that by 42. It's 90%. Or 90% not including illegal children that may be ineligible. I guess that just depends on state by state policy at that point. But that's 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10. That's what you're punishing. For no fucking reason. Anyways, if you like math, let me know. Jesus Christ, this was long again. Do big shorter. Big shorter. Next one. Try again. This is longer than last video. Alright, until next time, this is Spark saying peace.